Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Where am I coming from? Well, this is the beautiful Columbia River Gorge right here in beautiful Washington State. Hey, America, I need to talk to you about this ATF rule that's supposed to go into effect. Well, I'm taping this on Sunday, May 19th. It's supposed to go into effect tomorrow. You know, the rule that will require every single one of you to get an FFL license if you have the audacity to want to privately sell a firearm. Now, as we know, the whole framework for this to even be possible was set up by the passage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, a piece of legislation that was called bipartisan because many Republicans actually supported it. But guess what? A few of them now are, well, they're getting cold feet, and they are going to actually try to put a stop to this. What are the chances that that's going to happen? Well, that's what we're going to geek out on today. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about the last chance to keep you from being an FFL. Okay, America, this is what we're talking about today. As you know, Monday, May 20th, a new rule goes into effect from your Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which basically says, hey, listen, if you are engaged in the act of selling firearms privately, you will now need a federal firearms license, and then, of course, you will be subject to all the regulations that comes with being licensed by the federal government. Now, as we also know, all of this was made possible by the passage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, a wonderful piece of legislation which once again proves the adage that if you give them an inch, they will in fact take a mile. Now we have certain Republican politicians who, I will point out for the record, were in support of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, who are now attempting to pass what's called a joint resolution of disapproval. The sponsors of the bill include Senator John Corwin of Texas and Senator Tom Tills of North Carolina, both of which happen to be fully on board with the passage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. But now that those on the gun-grabbing left have decided to take changes in statutory language, of which these two senators knew were occurring, and turn it into a rule that will basically shut down the private transaction of firearms nationwide, well, now suddenly these senators are getting cold feet, as well as 43 other Republican legislators who have now signed on to this joint resolution, many of which, I will point out again, were in support of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Now, what exactly is a joint resolution of disapproval, and does it have any effect whatsoever? The answer to it is yes, it does. Actually, it's pretty much tantamount to a piece of legislation. It has to be passed the same way, but if passed, it would actually alleviate and eliminate the rule in its entirety and preclude the ATF from ever passing a similar rule. Now, according to Senator Tillis, he is shocked at the ATF's overreach and was quoted as saying, "It's outrageous that the Biden administration decided to take a good faith effort to curb the mental health crisis across our country and turn it into an unconstitutional attempt to restrict firearms from law-abiding American citizens. This overreach is exactly why Republicans don't trust this administration and will set back any attempt on future bipartisan legislation as long as President Biden is in office. I encourage my colleagues to support this CRA we introduced and immediately overturn this ridiculous regulation." Well, like I said, a joint resolution of disapproval will require that this pass by a majority vote out of the Senate, and then it will be sent over to the House, where it will have to pass out of the House also by a majority. And then if it passes out of both chambers, it would go to the president for signature, which we know is tantamount to throwing rocks at the moon. So while this is a very nice gesture, and it certainly has some symbolic meaning to these senators who suddenly have realized that, oops, we may have overdone it here, the truth of the matter is that unless a court stops the implementation of this rule, the likelihood that this joint resolution of disapproval is going to pass out of both chambers and be signed by the President of the United States is somewhere between slim and none. Now, Georgia Representative Andrew Clyde will be leading the charge over in the House of Representatives should this make it out of the Senate. In his statements in support of this resolution, he was quoted as saying, "The ATF's engaged in business rule represents the Biden administration's latest attempt to institute universal background checks, advance the left's radical gun control agenda, and infringe on Americans' Second Amendment rights. Private citizens simply shouldn't be forced to jump through unelected anti-gun bureaucrats' unconstitutional hurdles to engage in lawful firearms transactions. I look forward to leading this critical CRA in the House, and I urge my colleagues in both chambers to support our measures to stop the Biden administration's tyranny in its tracks. But in the meantime, while all of these politicians blow a lot of hot air, well, ATF's rule is still going into effect. So, like I said on this video right here, if you are engaged in the business of private firearms transactions, if you're spending a lot of time on gun broker or arms list or things like that, you need to carefully watch not only this joint resolution of disapproval, you need to carefully watch the case of Texas versus ATF. Because unless there is injunctive relief, or unless this rule is thrown out on its ass, you engaging in that activity, which was perfectly lawful yesterday, does in fact place you in jeopardy of being in trouble with the ATF. Listen, everything that we relied upon in making this video right here, we will go ahead and link up down below so that you can geek out on it for yourself. If you got any ideas for videos that we should be doing here at Washington Gun Law, go ahead and click on that link right there, because some of the best video ideas we ever had weren't really our ideas. And then finally, if you got any questions about this or anything else related to what's left of your Second Amendment rights, you should know how to contact Washington Gun Law. If you don't, that information's down below in the description box. And then let's everyone remember that part of being a lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. From the beautiful Columbia River Gorge, thanks for watching and stay safe.